Psalm 23, the Amplified Bible. The Lord is my shepherd, to feed, to guide, and to shield me. I shall not want. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still and quiet waters. He refreshes and restores my soul. Life. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the sunless valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod to protect, and your staff to guide. They comfort and console me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed and refreshed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy and unfailing love shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house. I shall dwell forever throughout all my days in the house and in the presence of the Lord. Psalms 23, and this is the Amplified Bible version. Grace and peace, friends and family. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with me. My name is Joy, and I am the founder of Pink Girl Teaches. I'm a certified life coach, and I help victims transition from the fog that they experience when they have been in a relationship with a narcissist. I want to take a moment before we get into today's discussion, and we are discussing these bad shepherds, right? I want to take a moment firstly to wish all the members of our community, and even if you are just listening and passing through, if it is your birthday month, well, happy birthday to you. May this be your most significant year yet. May the goodness of the Lord continue to follow you all the days of our lives, of your life, should I say. I celebrate you and I thank God for your life. I want to encourage you to take a look at the community tab, because I will be sharing some information about upcoming events and things that I will be doing to help in your journey. And also, if you're not subscribed to receive, or you're not receiving my newsletter, I encourage you to to go to my website, which is www.pinkgirlteaches.com, and subscribe for the newsletter. I send out messages every Wednesday, edifying and encouraging you, as well as also just sharing what's going on with Pink Girl Teaches. So let's have this discussion. You know, over the last few months, I've spoken to several people who have mentioned, and the cognitive dissonance is really real when they have been either in a relationship with a narcissistic pastor, a narcissistic church leader. It doesn't even matter what office they are in. Sometimes they are, just because we see them investment, it does not mean that they are actually walking in the call that is associated with the title that they carry. Sometimes, and this also applies to those that are, in marriages or even just raised by narcissists, right? Who are highly religious. Listen, just because they're religious, it does not mean that they're in relationship with God. Those are two separate things. And it's disheartening to hear the pain that these people cause, but we must remember that fundamentally, if they are a narcissist, they cannot represent God, because those are two opposing kingdoms. God never partners with darkness. He is light. He is light. He is the light, actually. And so I want to just let you know, first and foremost, abuse, which is the harm or the which is harm of another person or people. And it is always done for self-gratifying uses, and it's used by narcissists, right? This is what abuse is. It is always to gratify the abuser, while they inflict all kinds of terror, torment, and torture unto other people. And you got to believe that abuse is contrary to God's word. It is contrary to God's truth and to the peace that he wants his children to enjoy. Abuse is inflicted by wicked people, and I want you to really understand that it is not of God. God does never, ever partner with abusers. He simply does not, because that would make him a liar. Because if he is love, abuse is not love. And we know God is not man that he would lie, neither is he the son of man that he would repent. Therefore, abusive people are not of God. They are not of God. You know, God, those that are of God are those that truly follow in his ways. So you may look at a person and their performance, because of course, if they are in the church at whatever capacity, or even the priest of the home or the woman in the home, whatever it is, they are going to put on a performance. It costs these people nothing to show up and perform, because they are always performing for an audience. So where they may try to subject you and make you feel like, listen, you're not doing enough. You don't understand the Bible enough. You can't read the word. You have no biblical knowledge and you don't understand what God is saying. They'll tell you that they are so superior and have a unique relationship with God that the Spirit of God speaks to them. No, the Spirit of God does not speak to them at all. They are making those things up. And furthermore, I would go on to say that they're allowing the demons that are at work in them, the enemy, to lead, to guide them, and to use them. It is not God. God seeks those who will truly follow his ways. And so I want to encourage you to not be deceived by the outward appearance of a man. You know, in 1 Samuel, right, in chapter 16, and I highly encourage you to go read chapter 16 of 1 Samuel. It starts off where God has rejected Saul as king. And he tells Samuel to fill his horn with oil and to go to Jesse. And what God says in verse 1 is that, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons. God has provided and set apart his choice. Read this chapter. I mean, it's very enlightening, and it will show you, or it will illuminate God's truth about leadership. God's truth about those that are playing the role of a religious person, right? And remember, religious really just means to do something faithfully. But because Saul is set, and I want you to also understand that in chapter 16, we see that Saul is saddened. Samuel, not Saul, excuse me. Samuel is saddened by Saul's disobedience to God and by God's rejection of Saul. Now, just because he is saddened, and it does not mean that he's not going to obey God because of Samuel's heart posture. Samuel says he is going to serve God. That says something about Samuel. Because I want you to understand, many people struggle with the harsh reality that not everyone in the pulpit, not everybody who preaches the gospel or teaches is chosen by God. You have to remember that Saul was the people's choice. God already knew the character of Saul, and that's why Saul was never God's choice. But the people wanted a king. In fact, the people demanded a king, and they ended up with Saul, and they chose him for themselves. Many are called, but few are chosen. So if we go back to verse 1, right, just to kind of tie this up a bit, God says to Samuel, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons, talking about Jesse. And God goes on to tell Samuel in verse 2, I will show you what to do. You shall anoint for me the one I name to you. Many are called, but few are chosen. God is telling Samuel that he has a choice. He has a choice. And this whole conversation just keeps my mind focused on the mere fact that just because people are acting a certain way or they are saying certain things, we got to trust God, and we've got to examine the fruits. The people called for Saul, yet David was always God's choice. It was timing. Samuel had his eye on Jesse's first son, right? I can't pronounce his name properly, but I think it's Eliab, right? And we see this in verse 7 of chapter 16. But what God says to Samuel is, do not look at his appearance or his physical stature, because I have refused him. I have refused him. Samuel was looking with his natural eye to see which among Jesse's sons would be the chosen king. But God is saying, no, not him. I mean, his appearance was one that was fitting of somebody to be a king. Again, that would have been the people's choice if that's what happened. But God stopped Samuel, and we see Samuel being obedient to God. He says, for the Lord does not see as man sees, for the Lord looks at the outward. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. This is what God is telling Samuel, that no, I know the heart of a person. So it doesn't matter what they're saying. God knows their heart. Is their heart postured towards God? Remember one thing about David, right? He was a shepherd. He wasn't even in the room. They had to call for David to come. He was God's choice, and man would never have chosen David because of his appearance. He had a rugged look. But he had the rugged look because he was a shepherd. He was in the field. He was keeping the sheep. Remember, David is also the one who fought a lion and a bear to protect the flock. What has a narcissist ever done to protect anyone? They throw people into the fiery furnace. They throw people into a pool of confusion. They lead people into cesspools. But David is the example here. David actually fought to protect the flock. At all costs, David took care of the flock, even putting his own life in danger, because can you imagine? Listen, fighting a lion or a bear, but that's what he did. He never left them in harm's way. And what this makes me think of is how Jesus left the 99 for the one sheep. And you can read about this in Luke chapter 15. That comes in around verse 4. So do not look to the title or the office or the vestment that a person clothes themselves in, but rather it's their fruit. And the only way we can know the fruit of a person is through the presence of God, meaning that we are praying about relationships, we are praying about associations, we're praying about partnership. God, is this who you would have who you would have for me to partner with in this season of my life? And we've got to wait. We've got to be willing to wait for God to answer, because this is where our protection comes in. Sometimes in that period of waiting, we can get disgruntled because he doesn't always answer immediately. And sometimes he doesn't even answer the way that we think he should. But this is why we need to become sensitive to the Spirit of God so that we are able to hear what he is saying. What we learn here is that God is seeking out a man after his own heart to be the next king of Israel. Now, I want to ask you, does that narcissistic person that you're either married to, you were either raised by, that leads a church or whatever, right? That narcissistic church leader, the one that says that they are chosen by God, is their heart are they seeking after God's heart? Do they look to exalt God, or is it all about themselves? Remember, Samuel assumed that the new king would be like his predecessor, which would be Saul, but God was not even interested in that. That was not God's will. Samuel looked at the outward appearance, but God was looking at the heart. God speaks to us in his word. Listen, we can never ever be confused about abuse, whether it is spiritual, emotional, verbal, psychological, or anything. When it is within the body, 1 Peter chapter 5, between verses 3 and 5, is a great place for you to go and read to see what God thinks about abuse. And I'm going to just read a portion of it and break it down a little bit. It says, do not lord over, do not seek dominion, authority, control, manipulation. Do not lord over the flock. Be examples. Lead by serving. We're called to be servant leaders. This is what a shepherd does. Shepherds lead. They lead their flock. They protect them. Lead by serving. Abuse is not of God, because abuse doesn't serve. Abuse actually steals, kills, and destroys. The New Testament doesn't present a society without authority or submission, right? And what happens is that it presents an orderly structure that is ordained by God and functioning in a manner that fulfills the teaching of the New Testament. And Christ is the perfect model both for the willing submission as well as the loving authority. So now I'm going to ask you, is this what that narcissist shows you? Is this what they showed you? Did they show you willing submission to God? Because Christ was faithful to the cross. He took up the cross and he died for us. Right? And Christ, he offered loving authority. It was not a dictatorship. He was not rude. He was not abrasive. He was not condescending. He was not self-seeking. He was not self-serving. He didn't seek to manipulate, control, or intimidate anyone. So now, you measure up that narcissist, right? That person that you may even just be questioning, how is it possible? How is it possible? Maybe they call themselves. Maybe because it's what their family has always accepted, that, you know what, someone in the family must run the church. That they continue to allow, they continue to call their choice rather than one who is after God's heart. Nowhere in the Bible does it command people to be abusive. You will not find a single verse there. But if we go back to what is said in 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 3-5, we're going to see exactly what God thinks about abuse. So, fearless one, I want to thank you so much for spending some of your day with me. Today is Monday, the 2nd of May, and it's my sincere hope that you have a fantastic day, that you will continue to allow God to work in you and through you. Have a blessed day, and God bless you. Take care.